Hello and welcome back to the course on Tableau. And I've got this feeling that by now you're probably getting a bit tired of all of these data prep tutorials. We've had a few in a row, and yeah, definitely it is a bit tedious sometimes, but it's a very important topic, so I'm happy that we're covering it off. And also, to spice things up, I promise you that at the end of this tutorial, we'll look at some visuals and play around with the data just to have a bit of fun. So today we're talking about the metadata grid. What is the metadata grid? What it allows you to do is it allows you to look at all of your columns separately without all of this data getting in your way, and get some information and maybe do some work just with the column names and just the columns themselves. And that is a very handy thing to have, especially if you have like 20, 30, 40, 50 columns. It can be quite a challenge scrolling around this place and finding the ones you need to do something about. Whereas if you use the metadata grid, they're right in front of you, all of them. So how do you get to the metadata grid? Well, like everything in Tableau, it's very simple. You just have to click this one little button over here, and once you're there, this is, I think it's called Manage Metadata. Once you're there, you've got the grid in front of you. We only have 4 columns, so it isn't that big, but at the same time, you can already see some how we can add some value to our dashboard through this metadata grid. So here we've got the original name of, or the current name of the column. Then we've got the table where it comes from, and the remote field name. So what was the original name of the column? So in our case, we've got regions, which came from our spreadsheet, and it was also called regions. Countries, it came from our spreadsheet, it's called countries. Pivot field names, in our case, it came from the pivot, and it actually represents the years. So because we pivoted on the year, you can see that pivot field names is the different years, and pivot field values is the total numbers of cars sold. So how about we go ahead and make these adjustments here? So instead of pivot field names, we'll call it year, and pivot field value, we'll call it maybe not cars, let's call it vehicles sold. And I'm not, I specifically don't want to put vehicle sales because that might imply dollars, and we don't want to confuse the user, so we'll just call it vehicles sold. Maybe we'll put a space in between them, and countries we can put us like uncapitalize it, regions as well, or just call it region, and in this case country. So that allowed us to clean up a bit our spreadsheet or our data. Now you can see it's much better. Region, country, year, vehicles sold. And that is how you work with the metadata grid. Once again, very small number of fields for us in this case, but if you do ever have more fields, you can come here and work with it, and it'll be much more convenient and much more handy for you. So here you can also like look at other things like aliases for change the names for your countries, or the different values in your fields, like do some splits, which we've already talked about, and so on. So let's have a look at some data as promised, because we want to see some colors. All right, so we're going to go to our sheet. What are we going to look at? Vehicles sold, and we'll look at it by year. Right away, we've got an interesting picture. So the total number of vehicles sold globally has been growing, and it's currently sitting at 65 million vehicles sold in 2014. What else could we add here? Let's add region. And now we've got a colorful chart. So orange is Asia here, and blue Europe. So we can see that Asia, Oceania, Middle East, 34.5 million vehicles were sold in 2014. What do we want to do now? Well, perhaps we want to see what percentage of the global sales were the sales in Asia. So we can see here right away that it is quite a high portion based on the size of this bar, but we can't really see what percentage exactly it was. So how about we compare the percentages instead of the total values? All right, so we're creating a calculated field, add table calculation, and here we will look for percent of total, but not across. We want the percent of total down because we want the percent of total for every single year. Click apply, and there we go. We can see that what percentage exactly each region is constituting for every single year. Maybe we'll just take this table calculation, hold down Control, add it into label, maybe format our label, By now, I hope all of this is very straightforward, what exactly we're doing, because this must be very easy stuff for you guys right now. So we'll just click format this whole tab and make it bold. And now if we format our label, we just want to change it from we'll put a percentage with no decimals. There we go. So that's what we can see. Maybe you might want to change it to an area chart, but then the label doesn't look as good. So maybe keep it at a bar chart. And so here we can see that in 2014, 53% of the world's vehicles, personal vehicles, were sold in Asia, Oceania, and Middle East. 19% were sold in Europe. So Europe is in second place, but far, far behind Asia, Oceania, and Middle East. But fair enough, because that is a very big region. And NAFTA, so the North American Free Trade Agreement, that's America, US, United States, Canada, and Mexico, 14% of the total vehicle sales. Once again, those are personal vehicles. So there we go. We had to play around with the data just to make it a little bit more fun. Feel free to explore further. This is quite an interesting data set. Maybe look at your country, see how the sales in your country have been changing. This is freely available data on the net, so it should be quite accurate. Next, what we're going to do in the next tutorial, we will look at the errors that you can that can happen when you're working with maps. So data errors when working with maps, and we'll see how to fix them, and that'll be a very interesting or very useful tutorial if you are planning on working with maps going forward. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, happy analyzing.